A young billionaire found twin girls crying alone with suitcases in the park. When he discovered the reason, he started to cry. Ethan Rayner never imagined that a simple walk would change his life forever. The day had been brutal, endless meetings, contracts that were going nowhere, and that familiar feeling that he was running in circles. At 32 he had built a business empire, but at 6 o'clock on that Tuesday evening, all he wanted was some fresh air. Riverside Park was just 2 blocks from his office in downtown Portland. It was his secret refuge when the corporate world weighed too heavily on his shoulders. The trees were already showing the first signs of autumn, and the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange. Ethan loosened his tie and took a deep breath. A few people hurried past, on their way home from work. An elderly couple fed pigeons near the fountain. Children played on the playground while their mothers chatted on nearby benches. Everything was normal. Everything was predictable, until he saw something that shouldn't have been there. On the farthest bench, almost hidden behind a large tree, 2 little girls were sitting alone. They had light brown hair and looked to be the same age, perhaps 5 years old. 2 small pink suitcases stood beside them, as if they were waiting for a bus that would never arrive. Ethan stopped walking. Something was wrong with that scene. The girls' clothes were dirty, wrinkled. They weren't playing, not talking. They just stared ahead with a sadness that children their age shouldn't know. For a moment, he hesitated. It wasn't his business. Their parents were probably nearby, but then one of the girls turned in his direction, and their eyes met. They were large, dark, and carried a weariness that broke his heart. Ethan approached slowly, like someone trying not to startle a wounded animal. "Hi, girls," he said, stopping at a respectful distance. "Are you two okay?" The one on the left, slightly taller than the other, looked up. She had a smudge of dirt on her left cheek. "Hi," she answered quietly. "Are you waiting for someone?" Ethan asked, sitting on the edge of the bench. The two exchanged a quick glance, as if they had a secret language. "Their mommy went to get food," said the first girl, adjusting her pink suitcase. "She told us to wait here." "When did she leave?" Ethan tried to keep his voice casual, but a growing concern was starting to form in his chest. The second girl, who had been silent until then, held up 4 dirty little fingers. "It's been 4 days," she murmured. The world seemed to stop around Ethan. For a moment, he thought he had misunderstood. 40 days, he repeated, his voice coming out weaker than he intended. "Uh-huh," the first girl confirmed with devastating naturalness. "On Monday, she left early in the morning. She said she was going to find work and food for us. She told us to wait right here. And you've been here, alone, this whole time." "We take turns," she explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "One sleeps, the other keeps watch. Mommy always said to never leave the suitcases alone because they have all our things." Ethan felt something shatter inside his chest. His throat tightened. His eyes began to burn. "And where did you sleep? How?" "There's a little spot behind that tree," the second girl pointed timidly. "We gather leaves to make it softer, and when it rains, we hide under the bench." A tear ran down Ethan's face before he could stop it. Then another and another. 2 5-year-old children, 4 days. Sleeping in the open, alone, waiting for a mother who wasn't coming back. And they did it with an obedience and trust that would break the heart of any minimally human person. "You're crying," the first girl observed, tilting her head. Ethan wiped his face, but he couldn't stop the tears. "I'm sorry," he managed to say. "It's just, you're too little to be going through this." "Mommy cried sometimes too," the second girl said quietly. "She tried to hide it, but we could hear her." That only made Ethan cry more. He imagined a desperate mother, trying to be strong in front of her daughters, crying alone so as not to scare them. "What are your names?" he asked, wiping his face with his shirt sleeve. "I'm Mia," said the taller one. "And she's Hazel. We're twins." "It's nice to meet you. I'm Ethan." He held out his hand, and Mia shook it with small, cold fingers. "Are you hungry?" "Always," Hazel answered with brutal honesty. "When was the last time you ate?" The girls looked at each other. "Yesterday a lady brought a sandwich," said Mia. "But it was only one." We shared it. And before that? I don't really remember, Hazel murmured. Ethan closed his eyes for a second, trying to compose himself. When he opened them, his decision was made. How about I take you to get something to eat while we wait for your mom to come back? The girls hesitated. Mommy said not to leave here, Mia said, uncertain. I understand, but I'll leave a note right here on the bench saying where we are. If she comes back, she'll know where to find you. What do you think? Ethan took a business card from his pocket and wrote on the back, Mia and Hazel are with me. Ethan Rayner. We went to eat at Tony's Diner. We'll be back in an hour. Phone 503-555-0147. He placed the card right in the middle of the bench, securing it with a small stone so it wouldn't fly away. There. Now your mommy knows exactly where you are. Mia picked up her suitcase and helped Hazel with hers. They were too small to carry them properly, so Ethan took one in each hand. Do you know Tony's Diner? It's right around the corner. We've seen it, said Mia. It smells good. And it has colorful lights in the window, added Hazel. The diner was almost empty at that hour. Ethan chose a table near the window, from where they could see the park perfectly. The girls sat side by side, their legs dangling in the air, still holding each other's hands. So what would you like to eat? Hazel whispered something in Mia's ear. She wants to know how much it costs, Mia translated, embarrassed. It's on me today, Ethan said gently. You can order whatever you want, anything. Anything at all? Asked Mia, her eyes shining for the first time. For anything. When the waitress approached, the girls ordered pancakes with strawberries and hot chocolate. Ethan ordered only a coffee, realizing his appetite had completely disappeared. You can order more if you want, he said when the food arrived. But they ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were their last meal in a long time. Mia automatically cut Hazel's strawberries into smaller pieces. Hazel offered half of her pancake to her sister, without being asked. You take good care of each other, Ethan commented. Mommy taught us, said Mia, wiping chocolate from Hazel's chin with a napkin. She said sisters always have to protect each other. She sounds like a good mom. She's the best in the whole world, Hazel said with conviction. She makes funny voices when she reads stories to us, and she sings when we can't sleep, added Mia. And when we get sick, she stays up all night taking care of us. And she gives the best hugs, Hazel continued. Really tight and warm. Ethan felt the tears returning. A mother who loved her daughters so much wouldn't abandon them in the park. Something must have happened. She must be looking for a job, Mia said, as if trying to convince herself. Sometimes it just takes a while. She'll come back, Hazel said quietly. She promised. When they finished eating, Ethan asked for more food to be packed to go, sandwiches, fruit, cookies, just in case their mother took longer to show up. They returned to the park while there was still a bit of daylight. The girls ran ahead, anxious, but stopped abruptly when they saw the bench was exactly as they had left it. The note was still there, untouched. No sign that anyone had come by looking for two little girls. Mia picked up the note and examined it, as if something might have changed. Hazel looked all around the park, behind every tree, as if her mother might be hiding. Mommy, she called out softly. Only the wind answered. Now what? Asked Mia, and for the first time her voice trembled a little. Ethan checked his watch. It was already past 8 o'clock. It was getting dark quickly, and the temperature was starting to drop. The reality was clear. Isla Bennett hadn't come back. How about you come to my house tonight? Ooh. It's warm. It has real beds, and tomorrow morning, bright and early, we'll come back here to wait for your mommy. I don't know. Mia hesitated. Just look. Ethan pointed to the sky. It's getting cold, and those clouds look like rain. There's no real shelter here in the park. At my house, you can take a warm bath, wear clean clothes, and sleep in soft beds. The girls looked at each other once more, weighing their options. Can we bring our suitcases? Asked Hazel. Of course. And tomorrow morning, before the sun even rises if you want, we'll come back here. Promise? I promise. Ethan's apartment was in a modern building 10 minutes from the park. In the elevator, the girls were impressed by the buttons that lit up and the soft music that played. Do you live in the sky? Asked Hazel when the doors opened on the 20th floor. Almost. Ethan smiled, opening the apartment door. The place was spacious, minimalist, with large windows that showed the city below. The girls entered slowly, as if stepping on sacred ground. "It's so big," Mia whispered. "And so clean," added Hazel. "And so quiet," observed Mia. Ethan had never thought about it before, but she was right. The apartment was too quiet. There was no children's laughter, no voices chatting, no life happening. It was just a beautiful, empty place where he slept between one workday and the next. "How about that bath?" he suggested. "I have shampoo that smells like strawberries." The guest suite bathroom had a bathtub big enough for both of them. While the water warmed up, Ethan looked through his closets for something they could wear. He found 2 old college t-shirts that would work as nightgowns. They were huge on them, but at least they were clean and smelled nice. He left the clothes at the bathroom door and went to prepare something for them to eat in case they got hungry later. 40 minutes later, 2 completely transformed girls appeared in the living room. Their clean hair shone, and the huge t-shirts made them look even smaller and more fragile. "How do you feel?" "Like princesses," said Hazel, twirling to show how the t-shirt flew. "Like we're rich," added Mia, touching the soft fabric. Ethan prepared the living room sofa with soft pillows and warm blankets. When they finally seemed ready for bed, Mia sat on the edge of the sofa. "Ethan." "Yes?" "Mommy's name is Isla Bennett. She has dark hair and sad eyes, but she's very pretty when she smiles." Ethan grabbed a notepad from the coffee table and carefully wrote it down. "Does she have anything else that makes her special? Any marks and scars?" "She has a small scar on her chin," said Hazel, "from when she fell off her bike when she was little like us." "And she wears a silver ring with a blue stone," added Mia. "She said it was from Grandma, who already died." Ethan wrote everything down. When he finished, he looked at the 2 girls who now seemed more relaxed. "I'm going to find your mommy," he said quietly. "I don't know how or when, but I will find her." "Do you really promise?" asked Mia. "I promise." Hazel had already fallen asleep, breathing softly. Mia was fighting sleep, as if afraid that if she closed her eyes, everything would turn into a bad dream. "You can sleep," Ethan whispered. "I'll stay here." And he stayed. He sat in the armchair near the sofa and watched the 2 girls sleep. As the city fell asleep outside, he picked up his phone and sent a message to his personal assistant. "Sarah, I need you to hire the best private investigator in Portland, first thing tomorrow morning. It's urgent." Then he opened his laptop and started searching. Isla Bennett, young woman, dark hair, scar on her chin, silver ring with a blue stone. 2 5-year-old twin daughters. Something had happened to her. Women didn't abandon daughters they loved so much like this. "I'm going to find you, Isla," he murmured to himself. "They still believe. And now, so do I." The next morning, Ethan woke up determined. He had spent the night thinking about how Isla had disappeared and concluded that he needed to retrace her exact steps. Someone must have seen something. "Today we're going back to the park," he announced to Mia and Hazel during breakfast. "We're going to talk to the people who work around there." They arrived at the park at 9 in the morning. Ethan looked around, planning his strategy. There was a hot dog cart at the entrance, a newsstand on the corner, and a few street vendors scattered around the area. "Let's start there," he said, pointing to the hot dog cart. The vendor was a middle-aged man with a graying mustache, who clearly knew all the regular park-goers. "Excuse me," Ethan approached. "Can I ask you a question?" "Of course, what can I do for you?" "I'm looking for a woman who disappeared a few days ago. She has dark hair, about 25 years old, and was with 2 little girls." Ethan pointed to Mia and Hazel. "Them." The man looked at the girls, then at Ethan, confused. "These girls, I've never seen them before in my life." "Are you sure?" "They spent several days here in the park alone." "Look, I work here every day from 7 in the morning to 6 in the evening. If 2 kids had been hanging around here, I would have noticed." Ethan felt the first sign of frustration. "And their mother, a young, pretty woman, black hair." The vendor shook his head. "I don't remember seeing anyone like that." "Sorry, I can't help." Ethan thanked him and walked away. The girls walked silently beside him. "He didn't remember us," Mia observed quietly. Let's try the next one, Ethan said, determined. The newsstand was on the opposite corner. The owner was younger, wore glasses, and had an attentive way about him, like someone who watches the street traffic. "Good morning," Ethan greeted. "Have you worked here long?" "About 3 years. Why?" "I'm looking for a woman who disappeared. Dark hair, young, was with 2 little daughters." Once again, he pointed to the girls. The news vendor looked at Mia and Hazel, studying their faces. "These girls here?" "Yes. Never seen them before." "Are you sure?" "They stayed in the park for several days, right on that bench." The man took off his glasses, cleaned the lenses, and put them back on. "Look, I'm here all day. I know everyone who frequents the park. These children have never been here." "But they were," Ethan insisted. "For 4 days." "No, they weren't. I would have seen them." Ethan felt his irritation grow. How was it possible that no one had noticed 2 children alone? They tried 5 more street vendors. None of them remembered seeing the girls or Isla. It was as if they had been ghosts. "Let's talk to the bank's security guard," Ethan suggested, pointing to the building next to the park. The guard was an older, uniformed man who stood at the entrance watching the foot traffic. "Excuse me, sir, may I ask a question?" "Go ahead." "I'm looking for a woman who disappeared a few days ago. She was with 2 little daughters, these ones here." Ethan was getting tired of repeating the same story. The security guard looked at the girls, frowning. "How old are they?" 5 years old. 5 years old, alone here in the park." "Exactly. Never saw them. And I'm here from 8 to 5, every day. If there were 2 abandoned children in the park, I would have called the police right away." Ethan took a deep breath. The frustration was turning into something stronger. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Positive. 2 small children alone. I would never let that slide. 15 more minutes, 3 more people. The result was always the same. No one had seen anything." Ethan sat on the bench where the girls had spent those terrible days. Mia and Hazel sat beside him, one on each side. "No one remembers us," Hazel said sadly. "How is that possible?" Ethan murmured to himself. "We stayed really quiet, like she asked," Mia said softly. The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, quiet?" "Mommy told us not to bother anyone," Mia explained. "To sit quietly and not make any noise. And not to ask anyone for anything," added Hazel. "She said if we were good girls and stayed quiet, she would come back faster," Mia continued. Ethan closed his eyes. The image became clear. 2 5-year-old girls, obedient, sitting on that bench for days, without crying, without asking for help, without drawing attention. Invisible. "You didn't ask anyone for food. You didn't say you were alone." "Mommy said not to bother anyone," Hazel repeated. "So we didn't bother anyone. And when someone walked by, we pretended we were playing out," said Mia, "or that we were waiting for someone who was coming soon." "How did you get food?" "Sometimes there were leftovers in the trash," Hazel said, as if it were normal. "And one time a lady brought a sandwich. But we shared it very carefully." Ethan felt a dull anger growing inside him, not at the girls, not at Isla, at the people, at all those people who had passed by for 4 days and hadn't seen 2 children clearly in a state of abandonment. Or worse, they saw and pretended they didn't. "Where did you sleep again?" "Back there, behind the tree," Mia pointed. "There's a little corner where no one can see." Ethan got up and went to the spot. It was a small space between a large tree and some bushes, almost completely hidden from the view of anyone passing through the park. There were dry leaves piled up, clearly arranged to serve as a makeshift bed. He returned to the bench where the girls were waiting. 2 5-year-old children, he said out loud, not to them but to the universe. Spent 4 days here, sleeping on the ground, eating trash, and nobody noticed. "We were good," said Hazel, as if defending herself. "You were very good," Ethan confirmed, his voice softer. "Too good." He looked around the park with different eyes now. He saw the vendors who swore they had never seen the girls, the security guard who said he would never let children go unnoticed, the people rushing by, focused on their own problems, and he understood something that made him even angrier. The girls hadn't gone unnoticed by chance. They had been deliberately ignored, because it was easier to pretend not to see than to get involved. "Do you know what's going to happen now?" he asked Mia and Hazel. They shook their heads. Now, you will never be invisible again. You will never have to be quiet so as not to bother anyone. You will never sleep on the ground or eat leftovers again. How do you know? Asked Mia. Because now you have someone who takes care of you, and that someone has money, has a voice, and doesn't accept children being ignored. Ethan stood up and extended his hands to them. Let's get out of here. We have work to do. What kind of work? Asked Hazel. We're going to find your mommy, and this time we're going to make noise. So a lot of noise. As they walked back to the car, Ethan made a decision. He wasn't going to let this story die. He would use every resource at his disposal. He would put ads in the newspapers, posters on the streets, use his connections. Isla Bennett would no longer be a lost woman nobody was looking for, and Mia and Hazel would no longer be two children who went unnoticed. Someone, somewhere, was going to remember seeing something. Ethan, Mia called out when they reached the car. Yes? Thank you for not pretending you didn't see us. Ethan's heart tightened. I will never let you be invisible again, he promised. Never again. The next morning, after the frustration at the park, Ethan made the first practical decision. He sat in his office and called Sarah, his assistant. Sarah, I need to hire a private investigator. The best you can find. Of course, Mr. Rayner. May I ask the reason? A woman disappeared 6 days ago. I have her 2 daughters here with me. I need to find her. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I understand. I'll arrange it immediately. Do you want me to research the best in the city? I want the most competent, no matter the price. Very well. I'll get back to you in a few hours. Ethan hung up and went back to the living room, where Mia and Hazel were watching cartoons. They looked up as he approached. Was that about Mommy? Mia asked hopefully. It was. I'm going to hire someone very good to help us find her. A real detective? Asked Hazel, impressed. A real one. Someone who knows how to find people. The girls seemed satisfied with the answer and turned their attention back to the TV. Ethan sat on the sofa between them, but his mind was restless. The more time he spent with Mia and Hazel, the more questions arose about their previous life. Girls, he said during a commercial break, can I ask you some questions to help the investigator? What kind of questions? Asked Mia. About your family, people who knew your mommy. We can answer, said Hazel seriously. Have you always lived here in Portland? I think so, said Mia, uncertain. We don't remember living anywhere else. And was it always just the 3 of you? Your mommy, you, and Hazel? Always, confirmed Hazel. Mommy said we were the 3 musketeers. Ethan smiled at the expression but continued his investigation. Did she have friends? Other mothers' neighbors? The girls thought for a moment. The lady at the bakery was nice, said Mia. Sometimes she gave us old bread. And there was a lady in our building who always asked if we were okay, Hazel remembered. But Mommy didn't talk much to other people, added Mia. She was kind of shy. Ethan made a mental note. Isla seemed to be a reserved person, probably out of necessity. When you're struggling to survive, there's no time for a social life. What about doctors? Did you go to the doctor? Only when we were very sick, said Hazel. Mommy was always worried about the money. She preferred to take care of us at home, explained Mia. Though she made tea when we coughed and bought medicine at the pharmacy. More evidence that their financial situation was difficult. Ethan felt a pang of sadness thinking of Isla, calculating every penny, too worried about money to take her daughters for regular checkups. And school, do you go to school? The girls exchanged that knowing look. Mommy teaches us at home, said Mia. She said when she gets enough money, we'll go to a real school. Is she a good teacher? The best, said Hazel with conviction. She taught us to read, write, and do math. And stories about different countries, added Mia. She knows about places with snow and places with beaches. Ethan was impressed. Isla was homeschooling her daughters while struggling to survive. She was a remarkable woman. He hesitated before asking the next question, but he knew he had to. And your father? The silence that followed was different from the others, heavier. The girls looked at each other, but this time it wasn't a knowing look. It was the look of those who share a sad secret. Hazel looked down and spoke so softly that Ethan had to lean in to hear. We never met him. Never? Ethan asked gently. Never, confirmed Mia. Mommy never talked about him. It was always just the three of us. You don't know his name? What he looks like? The girls shook their heads in unison. Once I asked why we didn't have a daddy, Hazel said shyly. Their mommy got sad and said that some families are different, and that we were a perfect family just the way we are, added Mia. The three musketeers. Did you miss having a father? Sometimes, admitted Mia, when I saw other kids with their daddies at the park. But Mommy always said she loved us enough for two, said Hazel. Sadly that she had the love of a mother and a father combined. Ethan felt something break inside his chest. The picture that was forming was devastating. A young woman raising two daughters completely alone, without financial help, without emotional support, without anyone to share the responsibilities. Did she work a lot? He asked. A lot, confirmed Mia. Just sometimes she'd leave early in the morning and only come back at night. And she'd leave us with the lady downstairs, said Hazel. But Mommy always came back with something good, a piece of candy or a small toy. Even when she was tired. Always, said Mia with pride. Mommy never forgot about us. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Isla worked all day, probably in strenuous, low-paying jobs, and still came home with small gifts for her daughters, love in its purest form. You know what I think, he said, looking at the two girls. I think you have the bravest mother in the world. Why? Asked Hazel. Because she took care of you all by herself. That's not easy. It takes a lot of love and a lot of strength. Mommy is really strong, Mia agreed. She used to carry us both at the same time when we were little. And she never cried in front of us, added Hazel, even when she was sad. The phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was Sarah. Mr. Rayner, I've made contact with James Morrison. He's considered the best investigator in the city. He can meet you this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Perfect. When he hung up, he saw the girls watching him expectantly. The investigator is coming here today, he announced. Is he going to find Mommy? Asked Mia. We're going to do everything in our power, Ethan promised. But as he looked at those two girls, who had faced so much in their short lives, who had a mother who loved them more than anything in the world, but had been missing for 6 days, Ethan felt the true weight of the responsibility he had taken on. They weren't just two lost children he was temporarily helping. They were Mia and Hazel Bennett, daughters of Isla Bennett, who had a history of struggle and love. And now, for some reason he didn't yet fully understand, they were his responsibility. Girls, he said, his voice more serious than usual. They turned to him, attentive. While we look for your mommy, I want you to know something important. What? Asked Hazel. Now you have me too, for as long as you need. Mia tilted her head, as if processing the meaning of his words. Like a borrowed dad? She asked. Ethan felt his throat tighten, like someone who cares about you, someone who will take care of you, someone who won't let anything bad happen. Hazel came closer and placed her small hand on his. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for not leaving us alone, added Mia. In that moment, looking at those two brave girls who had survived things no child should ever face, Ethan understood that his life had changed forever. It didn't matter what the investigator discovered. It didn't matter how long it took to find Isla. Mia and Hazel Bennett were now part of his story, and he would do anything to protect them. Ethan woke to a sound that shouldn't exist at that time of night. 3:15 in the morning, according to the digital clock that glowed in the dark. Sobs, quiet but unmistakable. He had fallen asleep in the armchair again after staying up late organizing the information for the investigator who would be coming the next morning. His neck ached from the bad position, but that didn't matter now. The girls were awake. Ethan stood up slowly, trying not to make a sound, and approached the sofa. In the dim light, he could see two small silhouettes sitting up, hugging each other. Mia, Hazel, he whispered. The sobs stopped for an instant. Then Mia lifted her head. Ethan? Her voice was choked with tears. I'm here. What happened? He turned on the dimmest lamp in the room, creating a soft light that wouldn't hurt their eyes. The two girls were sitting in the middle of the sofa, still wearing the huge t-shirts that served as pajamas, their hair messy, their eyes red from crying. We had a bad dream, said Hazel, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan sat on the edge of the sofa, keeping a respectful distance. Do you want to tell me about the dream? Mia wiped her nose on her t-shirt sleeve. We dreamed that she was never coming back, she said, the words coming out between sobs she was trying to control. That Mommy was going away forever and would forget about us, Hazel continued, snuggling closer to her sister. Ethan's heart ached. It was their deepest fear, the terror they had probably carried since they woke up that first day in the park and realized their mother wasn't there. It was just a dream, he said gently. Nightmares sometimes feel real, but they're not. But what if it is real? Asked Mia, her big eyes shining with unshed tears. What if she really doesn't come back? We miss Mommy so much, said Hazel, her voice breaking. So much. And then the floodgates opened. The two girls began to cry for real, not the contained sobs from before, but the deep weeping of children who had held everything in for too long. Ethan felt something shatter in his chest. For the past few days, Mia and Hazel had been so brave, so mature for their age. They had accepted the situation with a resignation that impressed him. But now, in the darkness of the early morning, when their defenses were down, the real pain emerged. They were just 5-year-old children who wanted their mother. Without a second thought, Ethan got off the sofa and sat on the floor in front of them, at their eye level. Come here, he said softly, opening his arms. Mia was the first to move, sliding off the sofa and straight into his lap. Hazel followed immediately, settling on the other side. Ethan wrapped them in his arms and let them cry. I know you miss her, he murmured, stroking their messy hair. It's normal to miss her. It shows how much you love her. But it hurts so much, Mia sobbed against his chest. I know it hurts. Missing someone really hurts. What if she's lost? Asked Hazel. What if she can't find her way back? Ethan took a deep breath before answering. He couldn't make promises he might not be able to keep, but he had to give them hope. Listen, he said, pulling back a little so he could look into their eyes. He held one of each of their hands. To mothers like yours, don't give up. She didn't leave because she wanted to. Something happened and now she's trying to get back to you. How do you know? Asked Mia, sniffling. Because I've seen how she raised you. You told me about her love, about how she took care of you, about how she always came home from work with something special. Mothers like that don't abandon their daughters. But it's been a week, Hazel said sadly. Sometimes things take longer than we want, Ethan explained, but that doesn't mean she's stopped trying. He squeezed their little hands. And you know what else? She's still trying to come back. In the meantime, I'm here with you. Promise you won't leave too? Asked Mia, her eyes still full of tears. I promise I won't leave you alone. Not even if it takes a long time for her to come back, Hazel insisted. So not even if it takes a long time. The girls looked at each other, that silent communication that only twins have, and something seemed to calm within them. You're very nice, Mia said quietly. Mommy would like you, added Hazel. I would like to meet her too. They stayed like that for a while, sitting on the living room floor, Ethan holding the two girls as they finally relaxed. Their breathing became calmer, more regular. Are you sleepy? He asked after a few minutes. A little, admitted Mia. But what if the nightmare comes back? Asked Hazel, worried. Go then, you call me and I'll come running. You can call me as many times as you need, even in the middle of the night, especially in the middle of the night. Ethan helped them get settled on the sofa again, arranging the blankets around them. But when he went to stand up, Mia held his hand. Can you stay close by? Of course. He settled on the floor, leaning against the sofa, where they could touch him if they needed to. In a few minutes, they were both asleep again, but this time, not alone. Mia had one hand resting on his shoulder. Hazel had turned on her side and her small hand rested on his arm. They slept leaning against him, confident that he would be there if they woke up. Ethan stayed there, uncomfortable on the floor, but without moving an inch. He watched the two girls sleep, their soft, synchronized breaths, their faces finally relaxed. And for the first time in a long time, perhaps for the first time in his life, he felt truly needed. Not as a successful businessman who solved complex problems, not as someone with money and influence, but as a person who mattered to other people, as someone whose presence made a real difference in someone's life. Two 5-year-old girls needed him. They trusted him. They slept leaning against him because they felt safe by his side. It was a terrifying responsibility, and at the same time, the most rewarding feeling he had ever experienced. He looked up at the ceiling, thinking of Isla Bennett, wherever she was. "Your daughters are incredible," he thought. "Brave, loving, loyal. You did an extraordinary job raising them, and I swear I will take care of them until you come back. They will never feel abandoned or alone again. And when you come back, because I believe you will come back, you will find your daughters safe and loved." The first light of morning began to filter through the windows, finding Ethan still on the floor, still watching over the sleep of the two girls who had changed his life forever. A week had passed since that difficult night, and something had changed in Ethan's apartment. It wasn't just the childish voices echoing through the hallways or the makeshift toys scattered around the living room. It was something more subtle, more profound. It was the feeling that this place finally had life. The mornings began to follow a natural routine. Ethan would wake up before the girls and prepare breakfast, setting 3 plates on the table instead of the solitary one he had used for years. When Mia and Hazel appeared in the kitchen, their hair messy and still sleepy, their first stop was always a hug from him. "Good morning, Ethan," Mia would murmur, snuggling into his right side. "Good morning," Hazel would whisper, occupying the left side. And there they would stay for a few moments, the 3 of them hugging in the kitchen as the sun streamed through the windows and the apartment woke up with them. "What are we going to do today?" one of them would always ask. "Whatever you want," Ethan would always reply. And they discovered they wanted simple things. Mia liked to help in the kitchen, always curious about how things were made. Hazel preferred to arrange the sofa cushions in different ways, creating little nests where she could curl up to read. It was Mia who suggested drawing on the wall. "You can't," said Hazel, shocked at her sister's suggestion. "Mommy always said you can't draw on the wall." "But this is Ethan's wall," Mia argued. "He can let us." Ethan looked at the white, immaculate wall of the living room, then at Mia's hopeful eyes. "You know what I think? I think this wall is very boring." "Really?" asked Hazel, still uncertain. "Really? How about we make a beautiful mural? Something to make the apartment more cheerful." The transformation was immediate. In a matter of hours, the white wall was adorned with colorful flowers drawn by Hazel, a family of cats made by Mia, and even some attempts by Ethan that made the girls laugh a lot. "You don't know how to draw people," Mia observed, looking at the stick figure Ethan had created. "That's true," he agreed, "but you can teach me." "Mommy draws very pretty people," said Hazel, carefully tracing a blue butterfly. "She makes big eyes and smiles that look real." "When she comes back, we'll ask her to improve our drawings," Ethan suggested. "She's going to like our wall," Mia said with certainty. "So she'll say it's beautiful." Park outings became an essential part of their days. Riverside Park was just 3 blocks away, and the girls discovered they loved the swings. Ethan would push one, then the other, listening to their laughter fill the air. "Higher," Mia would shout, always the more adventurous one. "Not too high," Hazel would request, more cautious. Ethan found the middle ground, pushing hard enough for Mia to feel the thrill, but gently enough for Hazel to feel safe. Other children played in the park, accompanied by fathers and mothers. Ethan watched the families and caught himself thinking how strange it must look, a single man with 2 little girls. But Mia and Hazel treated him with such naturalness, with so much affection, that other people soon understood that they belonged to each other. "Is that your daddy?" a girl with curly hair asked Mia on the slide. "No," Mia replied simply. "He's Ethan. He takes care of us." "Where's your daddy then?" "We don't have a daddy. We just have Mommy and Ethan now." The simplicity with which she explained the situation warmed Ethan's heart. To them, he was already part of the family, not as a substitute for anyone, but as a natural addition to their lives. The afternoons were for calmer activities. Mia liked to help Ethan with work, sitting next to him in the office with paper and pencil, pretending she also had important meetings. Hazel preferred to curl up on the sofa with books, asking Ethan to read to her. "You read differently than Mommy," Hazel observed one day, as they finished a book about a gentle dragon. "Different how?" "Mommy does more voices. You read more slowly. Do you prefer how she reads?" Hazel thought for a moment. I like both ways. Mommy's is more fun. Yours is more calming. It was in these moments that Ethan realized how completely his life had changed. Before, his afternoons were filled with meetings, phone calls, complex problems that needed to be solved. Now, the most important thing in his day was reading children's stories with the right intonation. And the most surprising thing, he was genuinely happy. I was always busy, he thought one afternoon, watching Mia draw at the kitchen table while Hazel arranged her makeshift dolls in the living room. Always running from one thing to another, always feeling like there wasn't enough time for everything. And yet, I was empty. Now I have silence with meaning. The silence was different now. It wasn't the cold emptiness of the apartment where he lived alone. It was the warm silence of a home where people love each other. It was the silence punctuated by contented sighs, turning pages, colored pencils scraping on paper, small footsteps on the wooden floor. The girls were laughing more too, not just the polite laughs they had at the beginning, but real, hearty laughter when Ethan tried to sing and was terribly off-key, or when he fumbled in the kitchen and sent flour flying everywhere. "You're unintentionally funny," said Mia after he had tried to make pancakes and ended up with the kitchen looking like a war zone. "That's the best kind of funny," added Hazel, licking raw batter off her finger, and Ethan found himself smiling. Not the forced smile of business meetings or the polite smile of social events. It was a real smile, one that came from within, that appeared on his face without him realizing it. One morning, while preparing breakfast, he started humming a song he didn't even know he knew. It was only when Mia commented that he stopped singing. "You were happy just now," she observed, stirring her chocolate milk. "How do you know?" "People sing when they're happy. Mommy always hummed when she was doing something she liked." Ethan stopped to think. He was happy, genuinely, completely happy. When was the last time that had happened? "You know what else? You smile more now," added Hazel. "At the beginning, you were more serious." "I was." "You were. But now you smile even when you don't realize it." In the second week, Hazel started to cough. It started small, a few throat clearings during breakfast, an occasional dry cough while playing, but by the afternoon, she clearly had a cold. "I'm not sick," she insisted when Ethan suggested she rest a bit. "Of course not," he agreed. "You're just a little tired." But when night came, Hazel had a low-grade fever and a persistent cough. Ethan panicked for a moment. He didn't know how to take care of a sick child. But then he remembered the stories they told about Isla, tea, a blanket, and affection. He prepared chamomile tea with honey, settled Hazel on the sofa with extra blankets, and sat beside her. "Mommy always made tea when we got sick," said Mia, watching her sister drink slowly. "And read stories very quietly," added Hazel in a hoarse voice. "Then that's what we'll do." Ethan picked up a book and began to read in a soft, almost whispering voice. Hazel snuggled on the sofa, her head resting on his arm, while Mia curled up on the other side. "You're almost as good as Mommy at taking care of sick people," Hazel murmured sleepily. "Only almost." "Mommy sang too," explained Mia. "But that's okay. You can learn." The next morning, Hazel woke up better, but still a bit congested. Ethan decided a warm bath would help, and he filled the tub with steam. "Let's wash this hair and get you all warm," he said, testing the water temperature. The bath turned into a small party. The girls played with foam and paper boats, while Ethan carefully washed their hair, gently massaging in the shampoo. "Mommy always took a long time to wash our hair," said Mia, leaning back in the tub. "She said clean hair took longer, but it looked prettier. She used to sing when she washed it," Hazel remembered. "A quiet song, just for us." After the bath, Ethan wrapped them in soft towels and sat with them in the bedroom to dry their hair. He used the hairdryer on the lowest setting, running his fingers through their damp strands with delicacy. It was in this intimate moment, with the two girls sitting on the floor in front of him as he carefully dried their hair, that Mia said something that changed everything. "Ethan? Yes? Can I tell you a secret about Mommy?" He turned off the hairdryer for a moment. "Of course." Mia looked at Hazel, who nodded encouragingly. "We used to hear Mommy crying at night," she said quietly, as if sharing something very intimate. "She thought we were asleep, but sometimes we could hear her." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest, but he said nothing. She would cry softly, so she wouldn't wake us up, Mia continued. And she always said the same thing. What did she say? She would say, "Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay, girls. Mommy's going to make it." Mia paused, but she was crying at the same time. "She cried alone," added Hazel sadly. "We wanted to help, but we didn't know how." Ethan closed his eyes. He could see the scene perfectly. Isla Bennett, alone in the dark, trying to be brave for her daughters during the day, but allowing herself to break only when she thought no one was watching. A young mother, without support, without enough money, repeating to herself that everything would be okay while tears fell silently. He understood, not with words, with his heart. He understood the courage it must have taken to go out that morning, looking for work or trying to solve some urgent problem. He understood the desperation of having nowhere to turn, of being the only person responsible for two small, precious lives. He understood that Isla Bennett had not disappeared by choice. "She was trying to be strong for you," he finally said, his voice softer than he intended. "We knew," said Mia. "That's why we never said we heard her." "We pretended to be asleep," added Hazel, "so she wouldn't be embarrassed to cry." Ethan opened his eyes and looked at the two girls. 5 years old, and they already understood about protecting the feelings of someone they loved. They already knew about silent sacrifice and unconditional love. Isla Bennett had raised two extraordinary people. "You two are very special," he said, turning the hairdryer back on. "Your mommy did an amazing job raising you." "Do you think she's crying now?" asked Hazel, worried. "Alone, wanting to come back to us?" Ethan finished drying their hair before answering. "I think wherever she is, she's thinking of you and trying her best to come back. And I think she's not crying alone anymore." "Why not?" "Because now she knows you have someone taking care of you, someone who will make sure you're safe until she can get back." That night, while the girls slept, Ethan lay awake thinking about Isla Bennett, about her lonely cries, her courage, her daily struggle to give her daughters a decent life. And he made a silent promise. When he found her, and he believed he would make sure she never cried alone again. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning, while Ethan was helping Mia draw butterflies on the living room wall. Hazel was on the sofa flipping through a storybook when the phone rang. "Ethan Rayner," he answered. "Mr. Rayner, this is James Morrison, the private investigator. I need you to come to Mercy General Hospital immediately." Ethan felt his heart race. "Did you find something?" "We found a woman, admitted for weeks after a hit and run. No identification. She was in a coma, but the physical description matches the information you gave me." "Are you sure?" "Dark hair, approximately 25 years old, small scar on her chin. And Mr. Rayner, she's wearing a silver ring with a blue stone." Ethan closed his eyes. It was her. "I'm on my way." He hung up the phone and turned to the girls, who were watching him with curiosity. "Was that about Mommy?" asked Mia, dropping her colored pencil. "It might be. I need to go somewhere to check on something. Can you stay with Sarah for a few hours?" "Is it her?" Hazel insisted, getting up from the sofa. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." 20 minutes later, Ethan was at Mercy General Hospital, following James Morrison down the white corridors that smelled of disinfectant. "She's in the ICU," the investigator explained as they walked. "She was hit by a car 3 weeks ago on a Monday morning. The driver fled the scene. She was unconscious when the ambulance arrived. No purse, no ID." 3 weeks, Ethan repeated. "Exactly when Isla disappeared." "Exactly. That's why we believe it's her." They stopped in front of a glass door. Morrison pointed inside. "Is that her?" Ethan looked through the glass and felt the world stop. She was there. Thin, pale, connected to machines that monitored her vital signs. But she was unmistakably the woman Mia and Hazel had described with so much affection. Dark hair spread across the pillow, the delicate face the girls had inherited, and yes, a small scar on her chin. "It's her," Ethan said, his voice coming out weaker than he intended. "So it's Isla Bennett." Morrison made some notes. I'll arrange for the official identification. Do you want to go in?" Ethan nodded, unable to tear his eyes away from the woman in the bed. The nurse in charge of the ICU was a middle-aged woman with a motherly demeanor. "Is she a relative of yours?" she asked when Ethan identified himself. "No. But I'm taking care of her daughters, 2 5-year-old girls." The nurse's expression softened. Her daughters were looking for her. They were waiting in the park where she left them 3 weeks ago. "My God," the nurse murmured. 3 weeks alone. She must have been coming to the hospital when she was hit. "We don't know. She was crossing the street downtown when she was struck. The driver didn't stop to help." Ethan approached the bed. Isla looked even younger and more fragile than he had imagined. He could see the resemblance to her daughters in the shape of her face, her small nose, the curve of her lips. "She's been here since the day she disappeared," the nurse said quietly. "No one came for her. We had no way to identify her. What's her condition?" "Stable, but still unconscious. She had a head trauma, some fractures, but nothing she can't recover from with time." Ethan pulled up a chair and sat by the bed. Morrison had left to take care of the paperwork, leaving him alone with Isla. It was strange to finally see her after all the stories the girls had told. He could imagine this woman singing softly while cooking, washing her daughters' hair with care, trying to be brave during the day and crying alone at night. "Isla," he said quietly, testing the sound of her name. "Your daughters are okay. They're safe with me." No reaction. Ethan took a small pink bracelet from his pocket that Hazel had made with beads the week before. She had asked him to keep it to give to Mommy when she comes back. Carefully, he placed the bracelet on Isla's wrist. It was too small for an adult, but he managed to fasten it on the last hole. "They waited for you," he said in a low voice, holding her cold hand. "For days, sitting on that bench because they trusted you would come back. Mia said you always keep your promises." He watched her pale face, searching for any sign that she heard him. "Hazel made this bracelet thinking of you. She said she wanted to give something pretty to her mommy when she came back." He continued talking, telling her about the last 3 weeks, about how he found them in the park, about the first warm bath they took, about the drawings on the wall, about how Hazel had caught a cold and he had taken care of her. "They are incredible," he said. "Brave, loving, loyal. You did an extraordinary job raising them." It was then that it happened, subtle, almost imperceptible, but definite. Isla's fingers twitched slightly, a small but intentional movement. Ethan held his breath. "Isla, can you hear me?" Another movement, clearer this time, as if she were trying to squeeze his hand. "Nurse," he called, without letting go of Isla's hand. The nurse came running. She moved. Her fingers. The woman checked the monitors, examined Isla's pupils with a small flashlight. "Her signs are improving," she confirmed. "She might be starting to wake up." Ethan stayed at the hospital for the rest of the day, leaving only to pick up the girls and explain the situation. He didn't want to give them false hope, but they had a right to know. "We found Mommy," he said when he got home. "She's in the hospital." "Is she okay?" Mia asked immediately. "She's sick, but the doctors are taking care of her. She's going to get better." "When can we see her?" Hazel wanted to know. "Soon. She needs to rest a little more." For the next 2 days, Ethan spent every possible hour by Isla's bedside. He read to her, told her stories about the girls, sometimes just held her hand in silence. The girls asked about her constantly. They made drawings to take when they could visit. Hazel picked flowers from the park. Mia wrote a letter in crooked letters. "Mommy, I love you. Come back soon." On Thursday morning, when Ethan arrived at the hospital as usual, the nurse greeted him with a smile. "She's waking up," she said. Still confused, but waking up. Ethan entered the room and immediately saw the difference. Isla's eyes were open, blinking slowly, trying to focus on something. When she saw him, she tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. "My daughters," she managed to say, her voice hoarse from the intubation. "Where are my daughters?" Ethan approached the bed, his heart pounding. "With me," he said gently. "Safe. They never stopped believing in you. Isla tried to sit up, but she was still too weak. Are they? Okay. They're great. Mia and Hazel are great. They're eating well, sleeping well, playing. They're waiting to see you. Tears began to stream down Isla's face. 3 weeks, she murmured. I left them for 3 weeks. You didn't leave them. You were hit by a car. You were unconscious. They must be furious with me. They're relieved. They knew you wouldn't abandon them by choice. Ethan spent the next few minutes explaining what had happened, how he found them, how he had cared for them. Isla listened with wide eyes, sometimes smiling through her tears when he told her about the drawings on the wall or about Hazel arranging the sofa cushions. You took care of my girls, she finally said. They took care of themselves. I just made sure they were safe. How can I thank you? By getting well for them. The doctor ran some tests and allowed short visits. Ethan went to get the girls, who bounced with anxiety the entire car ride. Will she recognize us? Asked Hazel. She might be a little different because of the medicine, Ethan explained. But she's your mommy. When they arrived at the hospital, the girls carried their gifts, Hazel with the flowers from the park, Mia with a colorful drawing of a family of 3 holding hands. You can go in, said the nurse, but only for a few minutes. Ethan opened the room door and let the girls enter first. Isla was more awake now, propped up on pillows. When she saw her daughters, her face lit up in a way Ethan had never seen in anyone. Mommy, Mia shouted, running to the bed. You're back. Ethan took care of us every day, said Hazel, more cautiously, but with her eyes shining with happiness. Isla extended her arms, and the 2 girls snuggled into her carefully, avoiding the wires and machines. The hug that followed was the most beautiful Ethan had ever witnessed. Isla kissed the tops of her daughters' heads, whispering words of love and apology. The girls clung to her as if they would never let go. I missed you so much, Isla cried. So much. We did too, said Mia, her face buried in her mother's neck. But Ethan said you would come back. And you did, added Hazel, just like he promised. The silence of that hug spoke more than any words. It was the sound of a family reuniting, of a love that had withstood separation, of promises kept and hopes realized. Ethan stepped back a bit, giving them privacy, but Isla called him over. Ethan. He approached the bed. Thank you, she said, the simple words carrying immense weight. Thank you for taking care of what I love most in the world. It was an honor, he replied sincerely. Isla looked at her daughters, then at him, and Ethan saw in her eyes the same fierce determination he had learned to recognize in Mia and Hazel. I'm going to get well, she said with conviction. I'm going to get well for them. I know you will. And in that moment, watching Isla embraced by her daughters, seeing the light return to Mia and Hazel's eyes, Ethan knew he had been part of something much bigger than just caring for 2 lost children. He had helped keep a family together. He had been part of a small, perfect miracle. And for the first time in a long time, he felt his life had a true purpose. 2 weeks later, on a sunny Friday morning, Dr. Mitchell entered Isla's room with a smile on his face. I have good news, Mrs. Bennett. You've been discharged. Isla was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching Mia and Hazel color in an activity book Ethan had brought. The girls now spent every afternoon at the hospital, and the room had transformed into a small family living room. Discharged? Isla repeated, as if she wasn't sure she had heard correctly. Your tests are great. Your recovery has exceeded our expectations. You'll still need physical therapy to strengthen your left arm and some follow-up appointments, but you can continue your treatment at home. That's wonderful, said Mia, dropping her colored pencil. Mommy's coming home. Isla's smile faltered for a moment. She looked at Ethan, who was sitting in the armchair by the window, and he immediately realized what she was thinking. Dr. Mitchell, Isla said hesitantly, how much time do I have to get things organized? Well, considering today is Friday, how about leaving on Monday? That gives you a weekend to prepare. When the doctor left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. The girls continued coloring, oblivious to the tension, but Ethan could see the worry growing in Isla's eyes. Mommy, Hazel called, noticing the change in the atmosphere. Aren't you happy? I'm very happy, my love, Isla replied quickly, forcing a smile. It's just that Mommy needs to think about a few things. Ethan stood up from the armchair. Girls, how about you go to the cafeteria and get those cookies you like? Your mother and I need to talk about adult stuff. Can we? Mia asked Isla. Of course, but don't be long. When they were alone, Isla lowered her head and ran her hands through her hair. I have nowhere to go, she said quietly. The apartment where we lived, I was behind on rent when the accident happened. 5 weeks later, I'm sure it's no longer available. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. And work? I cleaned houses, but they were odd jobs, nothing permanent. And now, after so long, she sighed. Who's going to hire someone who disappeared for over a month? Isla, I know what you're going to say, she interrupted him. That I'll find another apartment, another job, but with what money? I have no references, no security deposit to give a landlord. Ethan watched the desperation grow on her face. It was the same expression he imagined she had that morning, weeks ago, when she left to try to solve her financial problems. I have some savings set aside, Isla continued. Very little. Maybe enough for a cheap boarding house for a few weeks, until I can get myself organized. A boarding house? It's what I can afford. Mia and Hazel have slept in worse places. The thought of the girls in a cheap boarding house after everything they had been through made something revolt inside Ethan. What if I had a suggestion? Isla looked up. What kind of suggestion? Stay at my apartment, temporarily. Ethan, I can't. Why not? Because you've already done too much. You took care of my daughters for weeks. You paid the hospital bills. I can't accept any more. What if it wasn't charity? Isla frowned. What do you mean? The apartment is empty during the day while I'm at work. The girls could help you with your recovery, and you could take care of them while I'm out. It's an arrangement that benefits everyone. Ethan, listen, he said, leaning slightly forward. Mia and Hazel have gotten used to that apartment. They have their drawings on the wall, their special corners, their routines. Moving them now would be another trauma. Isla considered his words. But I have no way to pay. I'm not asking for payment. I'm offering a space for you to recover. All of you. Why? Asked Isla, genuinely confused. Why would you do this for people you barely know? Ethan thought about the answer. How could he explain that these people he barely knew had completely changed his life? How could he say that the quiet, empty apartment now felt like a home when they were there? Because the three of you taught me what a family is, he said simply. Isla felt her eyes well up with tears. I don't know how to accept so much help. You start by accepting it one day at a time. Just then, Mia and Hazel returned with cookies and smiles on their faces. Look what we got, Mia announced, holding up a paper bag. The lady at the cafeteria gave us extra because we're twins. And she said you're very pretty, Mommy, added Hazel. Ethan showed her a picture of us. You showed a picture of me to strangers, Isla asked, but she was smiling. It was to practice talking about you, Ethan explained. The girls wanted to make sure they knew how to describe their mother properly. We described your hair color, your eyes, even the scar on your chin, Mia said proudly. And the way you smile, Hazel completed. Isla looked at her daughters, then at Ethan, and something settled in her heart. Ethan, she said, your offer. Yes. Stay here. Until you recover. Take your time. You have this space. Isla blinked, confused. Sorry, I meant... Ethan blushed slightly. Stay there. At my apartment. Until you recover. Take your time. You all have that space. The silence that followed was different from the previous one. It was charged with emotion, not tension. For how long? Isla finally asked. For as long as you need. And what if it's a long time? Then it will be a long time. Isla looked at her daughters, who were watching the conversation with interest. She saw Mia holding Hazel's hand, both clearly hoping she would say yes. She saw how safe they felt with Ethan, how they treated him not as a stranger who was helping them, but as someone who belonged in their lives. I have no way to thank you, she finally said, her voice choked with emotion. Not yet. You don't need to thank me. You need to get well. Are we all going to live together? Asked Mia, no longer able to contain her curiosity. For a while, Isla confirmed. Like a real family, Hazel insisted. Ethan and Isla looked at each other. The question was innocent, but loaded with meaning. Like people who care about each other, Ethan said carefully. Isn't that the same thing as a family? Asked Mia. Sometimes it's even better, Isla answered quietly. On Monday, Isla left the hospital with a small suitcase of clothes that Ethan had bought during her stay. The girls carried the drawings they had made to decorate her room, because now she would have her own room, not just a corner in the apartment. In the car, on the way to the apartment, Hazel made an observation that perfectly summed up the situation. Now there are 4 of us, she said, counting on her little fingers. Mommy, me, Mia, and Ethan. 4 people who are going to learn to live together, Isla agreed. 4 people who are going to take care of each other, Ethan added. Like a family, Mia concluded with satisfaction. When they arrived at the apartment, Ethan carried Isla's suitcase while the girls ran ahead, eager to show their mother all the special corners they had discovered during their stay. Look, Mommy, our drawing wall, Mia shouted from the living room. And this is where we watch movies, Hazel called from the sofa. Isla stopped at the entrance to the living room and observed the walls decorated with children's art, the books scattered on the coffee table, the cushions arranged comfortably on the sofa. It was clearly a space that had been transformed by the presence of children. They've turned this place into a home, Ethan commented, approaching her. Santuhis, Isla corrected, looking at him. The 3 of you did this together. And it was true. Now there were 4 people in the apartment. 4 people with different stories, different baggage, different fears. 4 people trying to figure out how to build something new together. 4 people trying to learn what it means to start over. Isla looked around one more time, at her daughters who were finally safe and happy, at the man who had saved her family when she couldn't, at the apartment that would now be their temporary home. And for the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, everything really was going to be okay. 2 weeks later, on a sunny Friday morning, Dr. Mitchell entered Isla's room with a smile on his face. I have good news, Mrs. Bennett. You've been discharged. Isla was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching Mia and Hazel color in an activity book Ethan had brought. The girls now spent every afternoon at the hospital, and the room had transformed into a small family living room. Discharged, Isla repeated, as if she wasn't sure she had heard correctly. Your tests are great. Your recovery has exceeded our expectations. You'll still need physical therapy to strengthen your left arm and some follow-up appointments, but you can continue your treatment at home. That's wonderful, said Mia, dropping her colored pencil. Mummy's coming home. Isla's smile faltered for a moment. She looked at Ethan, who was sitting in the armchair by the window, and he immediately realized what she was thinking. Dr. Mitchell, Isla said hesitantly. How much time do I have to get things organized? Well, considering today is Friday, how about leaving on Monday? That gives you a weekend to prepare. When the doctor left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. The girls continued coloring, oblivious to the tension, but Ethan could see the worry growing in Isla's eyes. Mommy, Hazel called, noticing the change in the atmosphere. Aren't you happy? I'm very happy, my love, Isla replied quickly, forcing a smile. It's just that Mommy needs to think about a few things. Ethan stood up from the armchair. Girls, how about you go to the cafeteria and get those cookies you like? Your mother and I need to talk about adult stuff. Can we? Mia asked Isla. Of course, but don't be long. When they were alone, Isla lowered her head and ran her hands through her hair. I have nowhere to go, she said quietly. The apartment where we lived, I was behind on rent when the accident happened. 5 weeks later, I'm sure it's no longer available. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. And work? I cleaned houses, but they were odd jobs, nothing permanent. And now, after so long, she sighed. Who's going to hire someone who disappeared for over a month? Isla, I know what you're going to say, she interrupted him. That I'll find another apartment, another job, but with what money? I have no references, no security deposit to give a landlord. Ethan watched the desperation grow on her face. It was the same expression he imagined she had that morning, weeks ago, when she left to try to solve her financial problems. "I have some savings set aside," Isla continued. "Very little. Maybe enough for a cheap boarding house for a few weeks, until I can get myself organized." "A boarding house? It's what I can afford. Mia and Hazel have slept in worse places." The thought of the girls in a cheap boarding house after everything they had been through made something revolt inside Ethan. "What if I had a suggestion?" Isla looked up. "What kind of suggestion?" "Stay at my apartment, temporarily." "Ethan, I can't." "Why not?" "Because you've already done too much. You took care of my daughters for weeks. You paid the hospital bills. I can't accept any more." "What if it wasn't charity?" Isla frowned. "What do you mean?" "The apartment is empty during the day while I'm at work. The girls could help you with your recovery, and you could take care of them while I'm out. It's an arrangement that benefits everyone." "Ethan, listen," he said, leaning slightly forward. "Mia and Hazel have gotten used to that apartment. They have their drawings on the wall, their special corners, their routines. Moving them now would be another trauma." Isla considered his words. "But I have no way to pay. I'm not asking for payment. I'm offering a space for you to recover, all of you." "Why?" asked Isla, genuinely confused. "Why would you do this for people you barely know?" Ethan thought about the answer. How could he explain that these people he barely knew had completely changed his life? How could he say that the quiet, empty apartment now felt like a home when they were there? "Sire, because the three of you taught me what a family is," he said simply. Isla felt her eyes well up with tears. "I don't know how to accept so much help." "You start by accepting it, one day at a time." Just then, Mia and Hazel returned with cookies and smiles on their faces. "Look what we got," Mia announced, holding up a paper bag. "The lady at the cafeteria gave us extra because we're twins. And she said you're very pretty, Mommy," added Hazel. Ethan showed her a picture of us. "You showed a picture of me to strangers?" Isla asked, but she was smiling. "It was to practice talking about you," Ethan explained. The girls wanted to make sure they knew how to describe their mother properly. "We described your hair color, your eyes, even the scar on your chin," Mia said proudly. "And the way you smile," Hazel completed. Isla looked at her daughters, then at Ethan, and something settled in her heart. "Ethan," she said, "your offer." "Yes?" "Stay here. Until you recover, take your time. You have this space." Isla blinked, confused. "Sorry, I meant—" Ethan blushed slightly. "Stay there, at my apartment. Until you recover, take your time. You all have that space." The silence that followed was different from the previous one. It was charged with emotion, not tension. "For how long?" Isla finally asked. "For as long as you need. And what if it's a long time? Then it will be a long time." Isla looked at her daughters, who were watching the conversation with interest. She saw Mia holding Hazel's hand, both clearly hoping she would say yes. She saw how safe they felt with Ethan, how they treated him not as a stranger who was helping them, but as someone who belonged in their lives. "I have no way to thank you," she finally said, her voice choked with emotion. "Not yet." "You don't need to thank me. You need to get well." "Are we all going to live together?" asked Mia, no longer able to contain her curiosity. "For a while," Isla confirmed. "Like a real family," Hazel insisted. Ethan and Isla looked at each other. The question was innocent, but loaded with meaning. "Like people who care about each other," Ethan said carefully. "Isn't that the same thing as a family?" asked Mia. "Sometimes it's even better," Isla answered quietly. On Monday, Isla left the hospital with a small suitcase of clothes that Ethan had bought during her stay. The girls carried the drawings they had made to decorate her room, because now she would have her own room, not just a corner in the apartment. In the car, on the way to the apartment, Hazel made an observation that perfectly summed up the situation. "Now there are 4 of us," she said, counting on her little fingers. "Mommy, me, Mia, and Ethan. 4 people who are going to learn to live together," Isla agreed. 4 people who are going to take care of each other, Ethan added. "Like a family," Mia concluded with satisfaction. When they arrived at the apartment, Ethan carried Isla's suitcase while the girls ran ahead, eager to show their mother all the special corners they had discovered during their stay. "Look, Mommy, our drawing wall!" Mia shouted from the living room. "And this is where we watch movies," Hazel called from the sofa. Isla stopped at the entrance to the living room and observed the walls decorated with children's art, the books scattered on the coffee table, the cushions arranged comfortably on the sofa. It was clearly a space that had been transformed by the presence of children. "They've turned this place into a home," Ethan commented, approaching her. "Santuhis," Isla corrected, looking at him. "The three of you did this together." And it was true. Now there were 4 people in the apartment, 4 people with different stories, different baggage, different fears, 4 people trying to figure out how to build something new together, 4 people trying to learn what it means to start over. Isla looked around one more time, at her daughters who were finally safe and happy, at the man who had saved her family when she couldn't, at the apartment that would now be their temporary home. And for the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, everything really was going to be okay. 6 months later, on a spring afternoon, Isla held the keys to her new house with hands trembling with emotion. "Is it really ours, Mommy?" asked Mia, looking at the little yellow house with a garden in front. "It's ours," Isla confirmed, her voice full of pride. "We did it." The house was small but perfect. 2 bedrooms, a cozy living room, a kitchen with a table big enough for 4, because Ethan would always be welcome. There was a small yard where the girls could play and even a flower bed where Isla planned to plant flowers. "Can I choose my side of the room?" asked Hazel, already running towards the door. "We can choose together," replied Mia, following her sister. Ethan watched the scene, leaning against his car, a proud smile on his face. The last few months had been an impressive transformation. Isla had fully recovered from the accident, landed a steady job as an administrative assistant at a medical clinic, and saved enough for a down payment on her own house. "Aren't you coming to see?" asked Isla, approaching him. "Yeah, of course." The house smelled of fresh paint and possibilities. The girls ran from room to room, planning where they would put their toys, where they would do their homework, where they would watch television. "Your room is really big," Ethan observed. "And it has a window that looks out to the garden," said Hazel, pointing. "I can see if there are any birds." "And the kitchen has a counter where we can help cook," added Mia. Isla made a point of showing every corner to Ethan as if his approval was important, and it was. During the months in his apartment, Ethan had become more than a friend. He was part of the family they had built together. "The living room is perfect for movies," said Isla, opening the curtains to let in more light. "And for games," Ethan agreed. "You're going to love having more space." The move happened gradually over the following week. Ethan helped transport the few pieces of furniture Isla had bought, assembled the girls' bed, and installed shelves on the wall. Not because she needed the help, Isla had proven to be incredibly capable and independent, but because he wanted to be present for the important milestones in their lives. On the first Sunday in the new house, Isla prepared a special lunch, homemade lasagna, salad, and a chocolate cake the girls had helped make. The table was set for 4, as always. "So it's just like Sundays at your apartment," Mia observed, arranging the napkins. "Better," said Hazel, "because now it's our real house." During lunch, Ethan observed how they had transformed. Isla had a newfound confidence, a sparkle in her eyes that wasn't there when they first met. The girls were taller, more talkative, more self-assured. They made plans for the future, talked about school, about new friends they had made in the neighborhood. "Mrs. Rodriguez from next door said I can help in her garden," Hazel shared. "She has beautiful red roses." "And the boy from the blue house is 7 and likes to draw too," said Mia. "He showed me a drawing of a dragon." Isla smiled, serving more lasagna to Ethan. "They've adapted quickly. Children have a knack for it." "All 3 of you have," Ethan corrected. "You've adapted too. You got a job, a house, built a new life. With your help. The help was just at the beginning. The rest was all your own merit." After lunch, the girls went out to explore the yard, leaving Ethan and Isla to clear the dishes in the kitchen. It was a simple but comforting domestic routine. "Do you know what I like most about this house?" said Isla, drying a plate. "What?" that I earned it with my own work. For the first time in my life, I have something that is truly mine." Ethan stopped washing the glasses. "What do you mean, the first time?" "I always depended on someone. My parents when I was little, then, well, the girl's father when I was pregnant. And when he left, any job I got, any place I lived, always felt temporary, like it could fall apart at any moment." She paused, looking out the window at her daughters playing. "But this is different. It's mine because I worked for it, because I proved that I can." "You always could," Ethan said softly. "You just needed the opportunity." The following months established a new routine. Ethan would visit 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to help the girls with their homework. Isla insisted on reciprocating, inviting him for Sunday lunches, sending him meals when she knew he was busy at work. "You don't have to do this," he would always say. "I don't have to," Isla would agree. "I want to." One Thursday afternoon, Ethan arrived to find the girls doing homework at the kitchen table, math for Mia, reading for Hazel. They had started attending regular school and were loving it. "Ethan," Mia shouted when she saw him, "can you help me with this problem? The teacher explained it, but I didn't quite get it." "Of course." He sat beside her, patiently explaining how to solve subtraction problems. Hazel, who had finished her reading, snuggled up on his other side with a storybook. "Why, can you read to me later?" she asked. "I always can." Isla watched from the kitchen sink, a soft smile on her face. This scene, Ethan surrounded by her daughters, helping with homework, simply being present, had become so natural it was hard to remember what life was like before him. "Done," said Mia, finishing the last problem. "A math is easier when you explain it. You're very smart. You just needed a little bit of help." "Ethan," said Hazel, closing her book, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Will you always be our friend?" The question, asked with the typical innocence of a 5-year-old, made Ethan's heart ache. "Always," he promised. "Even when we get big, even when you're adults, and even if you have your own family?" Ethan looked at Isla, who had stopped washing dishes to listen to the conversation. "You are my family too," he said simply. Mia and Hazel exchanged that knowing smile. "You're our best friend," Mia declared. "The one who always stays," added Hazel. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, Ethan was getting ready to leave after spending the day helping Isla plant flowers in the garden. The girls were taking a bath, and the house was enveloped in the typical tranquility of the end of the day. "They've grown so much," Isla commented, looking at the toys scattered in the yard. "They really have. And so have you." "What do you mean?" "You're more confident, more yourself." Isla smiled. "I think for the first time in my life, I know who I am. Not someone's daughter, not someone's ex. I'm Isla, Mia and Hazel's mum, Ethan's friend." They walked to the car, where Ethan always said his goodbyes, but this time, Isla held his hand before he could open the door. "Ethan," he turned to her, "I will never forget what you did for me and for my daughters." "Isla, let me finish," she said softly. "Before I met you, I thought rich people didn't care about anyone, that they had money and power, but no heart." Ethan felt his eyes well up with tears. "But you showed me it's different. That there is genuine kindness in the world, that some people help because they want to help, not because they expect something in return. I didn't do anything special." "You saved my family," Isla interrupted. "When I couldn't protect my daughters, you protected them. When I couldn't take care of them, you took care of them. And when I needed to learn how to live again, you taught me." Tears were now streaming down Ethan's face. "And you all taught me what a family is," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I had everything. Money, success, a comfortable life. But I had nothing that truly mattered until I found the 3 of you." Isla squeezed his hand. "But then we're a family," Ethan corrected. From the living room window, 2 little heads watched the conversation. "Are they crying?" Mia whispered. "I think they're happy tears," Hazel replied. "Sound like when you get so happy you cry at the same time. Like when you found your lost doll. Like when Mommy got out of the hospital." They watched Ethan and Isla hug at the entrance of the house, a long hug full of mutual gratitude. "I think we're going to be a family forever," Mia murmured. "I think so too," Hazel agreed. And in the little yellow house with the garden in front, 4 people whom fate had brought together in an unexpected way continued to build something beautiful and lasting. It wasn't the traditional family any of them had planned. It was something much better. It was a chosen family built with love, care, and the certainty that sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.